So hello and welcome to the presentation of AstroCamp 2022. My name is Carlos Martins. I'm the scientific director of the camp. And in the next 45 minutes or so, I'll explain to you what the AstroCamp project is, what plans we have for this year's edition, and specifically how you can apply to it if you are interested. So let's start with an overview of the AstroCamp project. What is the AstroCamp? So the AstroCamp is an academic excellence program in the field of astronomy and physics, which has been organized since 2012 by the Center of Astrophysics of the University of Porto and the Paredes do Coura municipality for students in the last 3 years of pre-university education. This year we'll have the 11th edition, which will take place at the Center for Environmental Protection of the Corno do Pico Protected Landscape Area, as usual, in Paredes do Coura. And for the first time, the camp will last 3 weeks rather than the usual 2. And I'll come back to this point a little bit later. So what is our goal in the AstroCamp? What we want to do is to identify bright and motivated high school students and give them, for these 3 weeks, high quality training in a calm and tranquil setting. In doing that, we also aim to stimulate broad skills that are important in the modern world, such as critical thinking, teamwork, group responsibility. And finally, we want to put these students in contact with other peers which come from different backgrounds, have different life experiences, but have common interests and common goals for the future. How do we achieve this? Well, the camp is a selective activity, which means that if you want to participate, you need to go through an application process. The first stage of this is just submitting an application. I'll explain how it works a little bit later. And the second stage of the selection is an interview, which is always done in English. And one of the principles of the camp that has been part of it since its beginning is that for students in Portuguese schools, the camp has no costs. This, of course, means that we need to find the funding for these students, but that's our task. So for Portuguese students or students studying in Portugal, the camp has no costs. Students coming from other countries can apply under the conditions that I'll specify. And we have some support for them, but possibly not full support, which means that these students may need to find support from local sources, maybe their school, maybe the municipality, or in extreme circumstances, if everything else fails, then these students may need to pay themselves for part of the expenses. The camp has 2 broad classes of activities. So there are scientific activities and there's non-scientific activities. So starting with the scientific ones, the main one is 3 courses that students have to take. So in each of the 3 weeks, students will take 1 course, and each course will have 15 hours of lectures and 4 hours of written exams. There'll be additional classes, so practical classes, exercise classes if you want, some of which will be related to these courses, but some of which will also be more general classes with hands-on practical projects. Additionally, we have stargazing sessions, online chats with astronomers and physicists all around the world, scientific documentaries, and various other smaller activities. So that's on the science side. On top of that, we have a range of other activities that vary a little bit from day to day and week to week. These include community service projects, and I'll give you one example in a minute. They include public talks in the evening, outdoors activities, including hiking. We'll be in the middle of the mountains, so that's a very nice place to go hiking, and various other recreational activities. Also, I should mention that although the camp itself lasts 3 weeks, our goal is that it's only the beginning of something, and there will be various post-camp activities, some of them done remotely, some of them done in person, to which AstroCamp students can enroll. Okay, so let me give you an example of what I think is our most impactful community service project so far. In the first editions of the camp, we built an accurate scale model of the solar system. And as far as I know, this was the second such model in the Iberian Peninsula, and it's only one of 16 currently functional in Europe. Later on in 2016, we added to this scale model a full hiking trail with the appropriate information at each of the planets. And this makes what is called the solar system trail. So it's a hiking trail of about 5.5 kilometers as the crow flies, but about 8.5 kilometers of actual walking, because you have to zigzag up a mountain. And this is a full hiking trail that anyone can take, but which is also being used as a teaching resource. So recently, the Solar System Trail has been included in the list of resources for 7th grade teachers in Portuguese schools. So I'm very happy and proud to say that there's a whole new generation of school kids in Portugal that will learn their solar system basics using the Solar System Trail, which AstroCamp students have originally built. So we had 10 previous editions of the AstroCamp so far, and here you have a sort of statistical summary of what happened. So we had 10 editions with 133 students coming from 14 different countries. Now, there have been 2 generations of AstroCamp, so to speak. In the first 4 editions, only Portuguese students could apply. Then, starting in 2016, we accepted applications of foreign students. So this is 2nd generation, going all the way to 2021. But in all these 10 editions, the camp lasted 2 weeks. So this year will be the beginning of a 3rd generation AstroCamp format, where the camp lasts 3 weeks. Again, I'll explain this format in a moment. But here you see some basic statistics on the participants. So obviously, in the first 4 years, all participants were Portuguese. Now, roughly have equal numbers of Portuguese and foreign students applying and being selected to the camp. We usually have more girls than boys, both applying and being selected to the camp. And in terms of distribution between the last 3 years of high school, so 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, these are the names in Portugal. They would be different in different countries, of course. But in terms of distribution of years, we have somewhat more applicants and participants from 11th grade. This is easy to understand for sociological reasons, if you think about it. Now, I should emphasize that there is no quotas on any of these numbers. So there's no quota for Portuguese and foreign students, no quota for boys and girls, no quotas for different grades. So the numbers you see are simply the reflection of the scientific merit and potential of the applicants, which are the selection criteria. It's kind of nice that we get balanced numbers in the end, but it's not because we impose it this way. It's simply a reflection of the applicants that we have. Okay, so that was the end of the first part. Now, let me tell you what plans we have for this year's edition, so the 2022 edition of the camp. So first of all, we need to discuss the eligibility criteria. So in this edition, we will accept applications from students who cumulatively satisfy the following 2 criteria. So first, in the current academic year, 2021-2022, they must be matriculated in one of the last 3 years of pre-university education in any of the 42 countries that you see in the bottom part of the slide. That's the first criteria. The second criterion is that the applicants must be national citizens of one of these 42 countries. So the 2 things must apply cumulatively. So for example, if you are a Portuguese student studying in the UK, so a Portuguese national studying in the UK, or a Brazilian national studying in Portugal, you can apply. But if you are, for example, an Australian student, an Australian national studying in Portugal, then unfortunately you cannot apply. So these are the eligibility criteria. What structure do we have in mind for this year? Well, the main change, as I said, is that the camp will last 3 weeks rather than 2. We expect to have between 12 and 15 students, between 2 and 4 teachers, so teaching the courses, and all teachers are active researchers. They are scientists doing research in astronomy or physics who will come to the camp each. And we will have between 4 and 5 camp monitors. So these monitors are university students, typically master's students, and in most cases, they will be former AstroCamp students, so people who have been to the camp before. They know how the camp works, at least they knew the previous format of it. They know what kinds of difficulties students typically have, and therefore they are in the best possible position to help you and to accompany you through the camp. Regarding funding, as I said, if you are studying in a school in Portugal, you don't need to worry. The camp will have no costs for you if you are selected. But for foreign students, we do have some international partners and some additional sources of. So first, ESO, the European Southern Observatory, provides a bursary for one student, which must be from an ESO member country. So this does not apply to all the countries in the previous list, of course, but it applies to ESO member countries. Then we have some arrangements with specific entities. So in Spain, or more specifically in Catalonia, Fundación Catalunya La Pedrera may fund up to 2 of their Jovens e Ciências students. And similarly in Sweden, Astronomiska Ungdom, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, may fund the participation of one of their members. Now, in both of these cases, there is no quota, there is no guaranteed place. What the arrangement means is that students from Jovens e Ciências and Astronomiska Ungdom can apply like anyone else. And if they apply and are selected, then these entities may cover the cost of these students. So there's no fixed place, there's no quota, but you know that if you apply and are selected, you may have support from them. And we have some more informal agreements with other entities like this, which may provide funding for other students in other countries. So in this case, if the students from these countries happen to be selected, we can tell you about these arrangements and put you in contact with relevant people, and then we can see if they can fund you or not. Okay, so that's the basic structure of the camp. But there's a couple of other things to bear in mind at this stage. So we'll have the application and selection process for the students, but there is also a similar process going on for the courses themselves. One of the nice things about the camp, I think, is that students are involved in the selection of the courses that they will have. So at the moment, there is a call for AstroCamp courses, meaning that the researchers in astronomy and physics can propose courses that they would like to teach at the camp, or that they would be willing to teach at the camp. We'll make a selection of these proposals. And in the second stage of the student selection, which I'll explain in more detail in a second, students who are in this second stage will be consulted. So they'll be given a list of possible courses and asked to express their preferences. So essentially, they'll be asked to rank the possible courses according to their preference. And we'll take this information, the student preferences, into account when deciding finally which courses will actually be offered. So this doesn't guarantee that each student that goes to the camp will have the courses that he or she would have preferred. That there's no commitment in that sense, there's no guarantee, but we will take into account the majority opinion of the students, let's say, and we'll try to come up with a consensus solution that that tries to keep everyone happy. So that's one point I wanted to mention. I should also mention that even though the camp itself is only in August, students selected to the camp will have preparation activities in July. I know in July, a lot of students might have national exams or other commitments, but you should bear in mind that if you are offered a place in the camp, we do expect you to spend some time in July preparing for the camp. This means reading some material that will provide to you, doing some mathematics exercises and things like that. It's important that you are prepared to set some time aside in July to do this preparation, because if you don't do that, then by the time you get to the camp, you'll be disadvantaged in comparison with other camp participants which have done this preparation. Finally, I also want to mention that one of the traditions of the AstroCamp, since the second edition, is that there is an alumni weekend. So in the weekend, in the middle of the camp, students from previous editions can come to the camp. Not all of them, because we don't have space for everyone, but at least some of them can come to the camp, spend the weekend there, do some community service activities and other activities, meet the new students. And also, of course, the new students, this year's students can meet students from previous editions. Now, this year specifically, I think it would be very nice to organize a 10-year reunion. So the first AstroCamp was 10 years ago in 2012. So it would be very nice to have in the camp again students from this first edition 10 years ago. So you can see what happened to them, how they progress in their careers, and so on. They're a very nice bunch of students. One of them is now a medical doctor. 5 of them have finished or are about to finish PhDs in physics and biochemistry and so on. So it'd be really nice if we can all get together and look back into these 10 years. As an illustration, here's an example of what a week in the camp might look like. So this is let's say a draft schedule. It's indicative, it's not set in stone. But basically, as I said, each student will have 1 course per week. So in the mornings, you'll have lectures of this course. In parts of the afternoons, you'll have practical classes. Some of them will be related to the morning course. Some will be more general hands-on exercises. For each course, there will be 4 hours of written exams. 2 of them will be intermediate exams of 1 hour, sometime in the middle of the week. The final 2 hours will be the final exam of the course, which will be on Saturday morning. You'll also have some specific study time where you can study the course materials on your own or with the help of the teachers and monitors, and also prepare the exams. There'll be additional blocks for other science activities, which will vary from day to day. And also evening activities that will be different in different days. Some of them will be stargazing, other days will do other things. There's always a public talk in the evenings on weekdays. And these talks will be streamed online, in principle on YouTube. So your parents and your friends and anyone else can see these public talks remotely from home. We'll also have some recreational activities that vary from day to day. On some days we might go hiking or go to the beach and so on. In this particular slide, I put the free afternoon, so to speak, on Wednesday. This might vary from week to week, depending on the weather and other circumstances. And similarly, on the weekend, we'll have some other activities, which might be community service, or might be alumni weekend specific activities and so on. So here, things will look slightly different. At the end of each week, the students and the parents will get a progress report. So this will include the grades of the exams that the students took, but will also include other information, essentially describing how you are doing in the camp and so on. So you'll get these progress reports at the end of the first and second week, and then you'll get the final grades and the final report at the end of the third week, so at the end of the camp. Let me just say a word on COVID-19. So despite COVID-19, we managed to successfully organize AstroCamp editions in 2020 and 2021. We're very happy about that. In 2020, we needed to have a hybrid format. So students living in Portugal were at the camp in person. Students living in other countries had to participate remotely. Last year in 2021, we already had a fully in-person camp, and everything went well. Nobody got ill. So we're very happy about that. Of course, we had appropriate health and safety measures in place in both editions. Now, this year, we're recording this video in February, and of course, we don't know at this point what the situation will be like in August. In any case, and as far as you can see right now, the situation is improving, and at the moment, we do not foresee any major limitations. So we expect to have more or less a normal in-person camp. Nevertheless, it is plausible, and I would even say likely, that some health and safety rules that have been introduced in recent years in the context of COVID will remain in place. So of course, we'll inform the participating students and parents of these rules as soon as we have finally decided. Okay, and that takes me to the final part of the presentation, which is what you actually need to do if you want to participate in the camp. So how do you apply this year's edition? Yes, so first of all, the applications are done online in the AstroCamp website, which you'll see in this slide and also in other slides. And if you're seeing this video, presumably you already know what the camp website is. So the application period is throughout the month of April. So from April 1st through April 30th. I already discussed the eligibility criteria. So students in the last 3 years of pre-university education in any of the 42 countries that I mentioned. So in principle, it's students born between 2004 and 2006. There is one place in the camp reserved for one student from the Paredes de Cora municipality. So since the municipality is a partner in the organization, the local secondary school is entitled each year to nominate one student who will automatically get a place in the camp. All the other places are assigned through this selection process that I mentioned already. So you apply during this applications period in April. We first look at the applications and make a short list of candidates based on academic merit and potential. And we invite these shortlisted candidates to the second stage of the selection, which is an interview that is always done in English for everyone, even Portuguese. These interviews will be in the last weekend of May. So for students in Portugal and living relatively close to Porto or Lisbon, you can do this interview in person, in principle, if COVID permits. So the interviews at the Center of Astrophysics in Porto will be on Saturday, May 28th. The interviews in Lisbon in the Pavilion of Knowledge will be on Sunday, May 29th. For Portuguese students living far from Porto or Lisbon, and for all other students not living in continental Portugal, so including candidates from the Portuguese islands of Azores and Madeira, the interview will be done online via Skype or Zoom, as you prefer. And you'll not be disadvantaged in any way by doing the interview online as opposed to doing the interview in person. It's easier and it's probably less stressful for the student to have an interview in person than an interview online. Online interview is always more stressful. But if you cannot come to Porto or Lisbon, or if it would be too inconvenient, don't worry about it. Just do it online. You will not be at a disadvantage at all. Now, important point, what do you need to apply? So what does the application package contain? So everything is filled online and uploaded online, but these are the things you need. First, you need a motivation letter written by you in English, explaining who you are, why do you want to apply to the camp, and so on. Second, we need a letter of recommendation written in English or Portuguese from your current physics teacher. I emphasize current physics teacher. Now, this has one implication for Portuguese 12th grade students. As you know, not all 12th grade students take physics, even if they plan to study physics and engineering in university and so on for various bureaucratic reasons. But what this does mean is that if you are in 12th grade and you are not taking physics, then unfortunately you cannot apply to the camp. Okay, thirdly, we need your latest school certificate containing your school grades. So for Portuguese students, this would be the second term grades, so the one you receive just before Easter. But in other countries where the school year is slightly different, it might be the certificate that you received around now in Carnival time or something like that. So essentially, the latest certificate you have from your school with your official grades. Optionally, you can also include in your application any certificates of participation in activities that are relevant for the AstroCamp, so other scientific activities. So this would be things like physics Olympiads or astronomy Olympiads or things like that. Finally, and equally important, if you're not 18 at the moment when you apply, you need a signed authorization from your parents, so authorizing you to apply. Now, I emphasize this applies to the moment when you send the application. And let me give you a specific example. Let's assume that your 18th birthday is in May this year. Then, if you are selected to the camp, when you are in the camp, you'll be 18. And therefore, you do not need your parents' authorization to participate. However, if your 18th birthday is in May, in April, you're still 17. So in order to apply, you do need your parents' authorization. So this means that if we receive an application from a 17-year-old without the signed parents' authorization, your application is not valid and legally we cannot even look at it. Okay, so this authorization, you send it to us essentially in two steps. You upload a digital version, so a scanned version with your application, so during the month of April, but at the same time, you should also post the paper version, so the originally signed version, and so send it by post to the Center of Astrophysics, and it must reach us by the 13th of May. So we can have the digital version to look at your application, but in the end, we will need to have the paper version to interview you. So make sure that you send the paper version also to us when you, or after you send the application. Also importantly, regarding the teacher recommendation letter, you do not send the recommendation letter with your application yourself. What you do is, in the application form, you indicate the contact of the teacher, so the email and phone number of the teacher. And when you submit the application, our database will automatically send an email to that teacher with the instructions on how the teacher should send the letter to us. So the teacher does that process himself or herself. And it's important that we must also receive the teacher letter by the same deadline of April 30th. Now, we are reasonable people, and if you submit your application 5 minutes before the deadline, which I do not recommend, but if you do that, we're not going to give your teacher 4 minutes to read the email, read the instructions, and send us the letter. But at most, we'll give that teacher 24 hours. So for applications that arrive in the last few hours, we might give the teachers 24 hours extra, but not more than that. After that, if the letters haven't arrived, then the applications are incomplete and therefore they're not valid. So make sure you tell the teacher providing your letter about this deadline. Of course, you should contact the teacher in advance, explaining that you're applying to the AstroCamp, that you need a letter, and that the teacher will receive instructions once you submit the application, but make sure the teacher knows about this deadline. Now, let's assume that you are invited to the interview and that you'll be offered a place in the camp. What happens then? So you will receive an offer of a place by email around the 5th of June. And in that case, you must confirm your participation by the 10th of June. And by confirming, I don't mean simply that you reply to the email and say, yes, I will come. I do mean that there will be some additional paperwork to be done. So some documents that you must sign or that your parents must sign if you're not 18. And all this must be done, must be completed very quickly. Because if it's not, then we will assume that for some reason you're not interested in participating, and then we'll offer your place to another student that was placed on the waiting list. If you have any physical or functional limitations or dietary needs or health conditions, it's your responsibility to warn us well in advance. For example, if you have food allergies, I don't know, if you're lactose intolerant, if you have asthma, other medical conditions, you must tell us well in advance. These are not a problem. We know how to deal with them. We've done it in the past, we can do it again. But we need to know well in advance such that we take these into account when we plan the activities. We need to plan the schedule well in advance. The SAIA people, for example, need to prepare meal plans well in advance, and we need to have this information in advance so that we can prepare appropriately. If you tell us too late, then in some circumstances, it could be that we can no longer adapt to that, and if everything else failed, this could prevent your participation. So make sure you tell us confidentially, of course, if you want, about any such issues. They're not a problem as long as we know. Now, the camp is residential, so this means that all the students must stay at SAIA throughout the 3 weeks of the camp and participate in all the activities. So it's absolutely impossible for any student to arrive a bit later or to leave a bit earlier. This is done for logistics reasons, but also, of course, for pedagogical reasons. So it's a 3-week commitment, and if you're interested in coming to the camp, then you should be prepared to make this 3-week commitment. Specifically, there is a meeting point that is used at the beginning, at the end of the camp, and this meeting point is the train and bus station in the town of Viana do Castelo. The 2 stations are just side by side, and all students must arrive at the meeting point before 4 p.m. on August 7, and they will be back at the meeting point by 12 noon on August 28. So students in Portugal, you might travel there by public transport, or if you prefer, your parents might drive you there by car. For students coming from other countries or coming from the Azores and Madeira Island, or for students who, for any reason, were not in Portugal just before the camp, presumably you will fly to Porto Airport, and we'll have someone from the camp, so one of the teachers or one of the monitors, waiting for you at Porto Airport in the morning of August 7, and then accompanying you in the trip from the airport to the meeting point and then to the camp. Now, regarding travel, for students in continental Portugal, if you travel from your home to the meeting point by public transport, so by train or bus, we can refund you of this cost after the camp. So what you do is, when you buy your train or bus tickets, you get a receipt in the name or with the tax number of the Center of Astrophysics, and at the end of the camp we'll reimburse you of that cost. If you prefer to travel to the meeting point by car with your parents, which might be more convenient because you have luggage and so on, then that's fine. We cannot cover that cost, but you can, of course, do it. The travel between port to airport and the meeting point is always covered by us. So for foreign students or students from Portuguese Islands arriving in port, we cover that travel from the airport to the meeting point. We cannot cover flights for anyone, of course. And for foreign students, if they do not find support from local sources, and if they cannot be directly funded by us, then the maximum cost of your participation in the camp, so the maximum cost for the local expenses, will be 400 euros, which should be paid by the end of June. So for the foreign students, in the worst possible scenario, let's say, the cost of your participation should be the 400 euro local expenses plus whatever costs you have for the flights to and from Portugal. Okay, I'm close to the end, so let me summarize what I said by giving you a list of things you should expect and be prepared for in the camp. So first, you should expect 3 weeks without internet and mobile phones. I don't know if you find this appealing or scary, but in any case, you should know about this and you should be prepared for it. You'll have no internet access during the camp, and we'll only have a very, very, very restricted access to mobile phones. So just once or twice a week, you can have your mobile phone maybe for half an hour, and in that period, you can call your parents, tell them you're okay, etc. The rest of the time, the camp monitors will be the contact point between the camp and the parents. So the parents can call the monitors if they want to know how the students are doing. And of course, if there's any problem with the student, that the monitors or I will call the parents and inform. The general rule is students have no internet or mobile phones. The idea is to focus you on learning and keep you away from all the other distractions. Along the same lines, you should be prepared to work much harder than you currently do at school. We're selecting bright and motivated students who have the talent and the capacity to work hard. So we're going to make advantage of those circumstances and essentially try to teach you as much as you can, so that you'll, in those 3 weeks, you'll learn much more than your everyday classmates learn. So we're going to learn things that your colleagues in school will only learn several years from now, or in many cases, never. So you should expect about 24 hours of lectures or classes each week, plus 4 hours of written exams, the distribution that I already mentioned. On the other hand, you can also expect a calm and relaxed setting, so without the stress of everyday life, and also with very little light pollution. So we'll be in the middle of the mountains, very clear sky. So it's a very nice place to do stargazing, for example, to learn about the night sky and so on. You'll have courses on your favorite physics and astronomy topics, courses that you like, because you'll be involved in selecting those courses. As I said, you might not have exactly the courses that you provide as preferred choices, but you'll have courses that most of the students like. And you'll be able to meet other students and monitors and teachers who have similar interests to yours. So all in all, I would say the AstroCamp is a place to learn how science is actually done. So for students who love science and are considering a career in science in a few years, but it's also a source of other opportunities to apply what you learn also after the camp. So as I said, there'll be some post-camp activities that the students can decide to join later. Some of them will be open for all the students. Some of them will be a little bit more restricted. So for example, you should have a prize for the best student in the camp, and that prize will include an internship done at the Center of Astrophysics in Porto in the following academic year. And there should be other opportunities like that that we'll announce during the camp itself. So just to finish here, here's a summary of the key dates. So the dates you have in mind. The applications are during the month of April, as I said, they're done online on the camp website. Once the applications period finishes, we'll look at these applications, we'll make a short list of candidates to be interviewed. And by the 13th of May, maybe a few days before, shortlisted candidates will be invited via email for an interview. So if by the end of May 13, you do not receive any email from us, this will unfortunately mean that your application was not successful. The interviews will be at the end of May, so in the last weekend of May. So importantly, try to keep this weekend free, because when we invite you for interview, we'll give you a day and a time for the interview, and you might change that slightly. So if we might invite you for an interview in person in Porto, for example, and you might say that you prefer to do it online via Skype or Zoom, and that's fine. But there'll be very little scope to change the time and the day, because we'll be interviewing 30-something students, presumably, so we'll have a very full schedule, and it will be very difficult to swap places in interviews because that would affect other people. So try to keep this weekend free, because you might be invited for an interview at a specific day and time. We expect to offer places by the 5th of June. People offered those places should confirm them by the 10th of June by completing the necessary paperwork. If someone does not do that, then at this point, we might still offer the remaining places to other students. And once all the places have been assigned and all the paperwork has been completed, we'll contact the other students, so the ones interviewed but not offered places, telling them that unfortunately the selection process is finished and they could not be given a place in the camp. And if there's any payments to be done, so for foreign students that do not have other support, they should be done by the 30th of June. I should say that in the case of VISO or Fundação Catalunha La Pedreira or Astronômica Undum, these entities will make the payments directly to us. So if they are covering your costs, then you don't need to worry about it. We'll send the bill to these entities, they'll send the money to us, and there's no work to be done on your side. So we'll take care of it. So this 30th of June deadline only applies for students who have no other support and they have to pay the maximum 400 euro cost themselves. And again, the camp dates are August 7th to 28th. And let me finish just with a couple of reminders. The first is that even if you have understood everything that I've said and are convinced that AstroCamp is for you and you will certainly apply, you must still go to the camp website and read the camp regulations. You'll find them there. They're about 8 pages long, so you can read them easily. So make sure you read all the regulations and make sure you understand them. And if something is not clear, if you don't understand what this or that point means, just email us and ask. Along those same lines, if you are invited for an interview or if you're offered a place, all such communications will come from the email you see on the screen. So astrocamp@astro.up.pt. Now, 1 or 2 people in the past have told us that when we send them messages through this email, those messages end up in their spam folders. We think this is not a common occurrence. It happens very rarely. But in any case, you may want to ensure that this email is in your allowed list, so to prevent against the possibility that some of these messages ends in your spam folder and you don't see it in time. And of course, you can use this same email account, so astrocamp@astro.up.pt, to contact us at any point from now and ask any questions about the camp itself, about the applications procedure, anything. So we'll read this email periodically and usually within 24 hours, maybe even less. We'll reply to your email and try to answer your questions. That's all I had to say. Good luck with your applications, and I hope to see many of you at the interviews and then later on at the camp itself in August.